Surprise! So what's going on? Mega Man 11 now? Where's Command Mission? Well, Command Mission's an RPG, need a little more time for that. And I got a review code thanks to the folks over at Capcom, so if you ask me, that takes priority. And major thanks to both the folks over at Capcom and my network affiliate Screenwave Media for supplying me with the code. I was going to get the game anyway because, yeah, of course I was. But man, it's been around 5 years since I last looked at a classic Mega Man game. It's been 8 years since the release of that game, Mega Man 10. Where does the time go? The late 2000s was sort of a resurrection period for the Blue Bomber. Mega Man 9 and 10 returned the super fighting robot to his 8-bit glory days, and for a time, it seemed things were going smooth for the dude. I mean, I didn't enjoy Mega Man 10 as much as I did 9, but both games were perfectly fine, and from what I could tell, both games did well financially. On occasion, I even boot up Mega Man 9 because of how much I love the special weapons. But then, like a bad case of deja vu, Mega Man just disappeared, and his future seemed so uncertain. Whenever there was news of an upcoming project, it ended up being cancelled. Mega Man Online, Mega Man Universe, Mega Man Legends 3, these all seemed like promising titles, but they were all collectively pushed aside, almost as if Capcom were trying to sweep the guy under the rug. Many think it had something to do with KJ Inafune leaving Capcom in late 2010, shortly after the release of Mega Man 10. That'd be remarkably petty if that were true. I never could find evidence pointing to that being the case, but I guess it wouldn't be terribly surprising given the damage Konami done to themselves concerning Hideo Kojima. Whatever the case, Mega Man was back on hiatus, fans of the guys didn't know what to expect. We tried to fill the gap with Mighty Number 9, but that had its own share of problems I won't waste your time covering here. I did a whole video on that you can find on the card up top. But almost as if Capcom wanted to prove that they could do better, we suddenly get the announcement of Mega Man 11. Hey, I don't know, it could be for reasons far more benevolent, but I can't help but feel this was in response to Mighty Number 9's lukewarm reception and management. I got a feeling that most fans won't care about that though. We got another Mega Man game. We're back in the classic era, but this time we're not going full retro in look and style. Mega Man's advancing his game this time. It's a 2.5D adventure that's exploding in colors, expressions, goofy cartoonish designs. Yeah, Mega Man 11 looks pretty good. About as good as Mega Man powered up on the PSP, I would say. If you have to go 2.5D, I think this is how you do it. I have little complaints about this direction. It helps that classic Mega Man by default has more over-the-top aesthetic than the likes of the X series or the Zero series. I always loved how expressive the enemies were in classic Mega Man. It's visually pleasing to me. Except with this guy, the Arc Welder. I look at these sad eyes and I'm like, fuck man, I relate so goddamn much, but I gotta shoot you now, you're in my way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love another shot at the sprite quality of Mega Man 7 and Mega Man 8, but this is a perfectly fine approach. My only complaint would be Mega Man's running cycle. I think it looks a little too floaty, like he barely bobs up and down while running. Besides that, I think Mega Man 11 looks great. Before we head a little deeper into the game itself though, we got a plot to cover, and as Mega Man 11 is the latest in the franchise at the time of this upload, it's not even a week old yet, I'll give you guys a time to jump to if you want to keep yourself in the dark, but keep in mind, I'm going to be spoiling some gameplay elements throughout the whole video anyway, so I recommend you skip this completely if you want to go in blind. I know that's a very no shit sort of thing to say, but you'd be surprised. I still get the occasional jackasses that get on my ass for spoiling things, completely forgetting that these videos are always my thoughts and opinions on them, but you know, whatever. I'll give you guys a timestamp this time if you want to go ahead and skip the plot summary. If not, then let's continue on. So holy shit, our story begins with a flashback of a young Dr. Light and Dr. Wily. What we're seeing here is the exact moment Light and Wily had their falling out, something no game up until this point really elaborated on, so that's pretty neat. Wily is trying his hardest to push his new double gear technology, a system that allows robots to become stronger and faster than ever before so that they're more efficient and treated with more respect. Dr. Light and the committee are against this, however, as the double gear system could be potentially dangerous if placed into the wrong hands if not put in check. So they say nuts to that in favor of Dr. Light's research concerning robots and independent thought, a process, may I remind you, that will eventually lead to the creation of Mega Man X, whose free will is deemed as potentially dangerous for cataclysmic reasons, but no, Light, Wily is totally in the wrong here. Fuck giving the guy a chance and having him go through the checks and balances. Alright, but to be fair, Dr. Light later on claims remorse for his decisions back then, and he's sure that if he gave Wily a chance back then, things would be different today. Well, too late for that, buddy. You fucked him, dude. After waking up from a bad dream, Dr. Wily suddenly remembers his double gear system from his youth and immediately puts it into action. During a routine maintenance session, Wily barges into Light's laboratory and steals the 8 robot masters scheduled for cleanup. Mega Man rushes in to stop him, and for a moment I didn't realize that was a broom he was carrying. I thought it was a random robot leg, and I was like, what the fuck was he doing back there? But no, Wily escapes, and Light figures that in this kind of scenario, you gotta fight fire with fire, and so Mega Man is fitted with the double gear system so that he'll stand a chance against Wily's new robotic armada. And from this point, it's standard Mega Man with 8 robot masters to destroy, the confrontation with Dr. Wily at the end, and nothing much more to it than that. It's funny how it took them until the 11th entry to finally head into Light and Wily's past as university students, and in some way, I sort of feel bad for Wily now, because though his intentions were most likely selfish, he just wanted to give robots the edge he thought they needed back in the day. For Light and his peers to completely shut him down, and I mean, he wasn't even given a chance, it's kind of a bummer. It's classic Mega Man, though I thought this will ever lead into anything, but I like that as the series continues, we get more layers to these long-running characters, however small they may be. Or, you know, this can all be an excuse for the double gear mechanic, it could totally be that. But okay, classic Mega Man is back, so what do we have here? Well, in terms of what he can do by default, it's good to see that Mega Man got his slide and charge shot back. I know Mega Man 9 and 10 were trying to go back to the basics, but getting rid of the charge shot and the slide, things he's had for years prior, always felt like they were taking too many steps back. It also didn't help that the only way you can get these skills in any capacity was by playing as Proto Man or Base. DLC, who had their own handicaps and such, were never quite Mega Man. But everything's back to normal now. Mega Man can do both once more, and it feels great. You get a lot of coverage with the charge shot this time. It just eats through multiple things at once, and I love how in this game, you can momentarily expose a heavily guarded enemy with a well-placed blast, leaving them open for the killing blow. It is immensely satisfying to do this against the classic tools or Sniper Joes. I feel the controls are tight and responsive, like there wasn't a time where I fell to my death or took a hit with it feeling like the game didn't read a button input. I died plenty of times regardless. I don't know, man, it really feels like Mega Man 11 overtuned the hell out of the knockback you suffer when taking damage, and that's on top of the longer recovery period. It feels like a good second before you're able to move Mega Man again. The two stages I felt this the most was in Torch Man stage and Impact Man stage. In the latter, there's a part where you have to ride these small platforms across the large chasm below you, but one shot to the skull was enough to send me to my doom, and it was fucking irritating. You can later negate most of the knockback with the proper chip upgrade from the shop, and it helps, no doubt, but the initial knockback is so overblown that it felt like it was intentional just so you can buy this item from the shop to make you feel like you're progressing artificially. It's like, damn guys, maybe next time crank it down a notch? Torch Man was my first level, and let me tell you now, this stage left me nervous as shit for the rest of the game because it did not leave me with the best first impression from playing this. You got three of these segments where you're chased by an instant kill firewall, and I died more than a handful of times because of knockback, the stun from the knockback, and what felt like crunch level design where you have to make these precise jumps to get through things before the wall catches up and incinerates you. It's also where I first discovered that Mega Man 11, at least on normal difficulty, is quite stingy with checkpoints, and some of these levels are damn long, some of the longest in classic Mega Man by far. Now, if the level's interesting enough, then I don't mind a longer than usual stage, but it was a bit deflating getting far ahead in a couple of these areas, only to mess up for whatever reason and get sent like 80 miles backwards. And I do hear that checkpoints are more plentiful in the easier difficulty, so newcomers have that at least, but even for normal Mega Man standards, the starvation of checkpoints here feels a bit gratuitous. Gratefully, Torch Man's level is the exception rather than the rule. As far as the other stages go, besides the two I mentioned, everything's pretty standard. And honestly, I don't think you'd have much trouble playing Mega Man 11 as you would normally play any other classic Mega Man, but it is clear that they want you to use the new double gear system liberally. Against the robot masters, it's damn essential because these guys will not hesitate to use the gear system for themselves, and it can either mean a super powerful chain of attacks or super fast movement that's near impossible to dodge regularly. Surviving these comfortably requires proper use of the double gear system, and when you can manage that, I think these are some of the best fights in the series by far. It feels good giving them a taste of their own medicine, whether it's with their weaknesses or your good old Mega Buster. But to stress again, Mega Man isn't completely helpless without these mechanics. In fact, whether you use the gear system or not, you still get Rush Coil for reaching higher areas and picking up goodies, and after defeating 4 robot masters, you get the ever-faithful Rush Jet, useful for gliding across any hazards as long as you got enough weapon energy to spare. There's also the return of Auto Shop. You can once again collect these bolts in every stage that act as currency for the store, and there's plenty to buy as you go along. Energy tanks for full health restoration, extra lives to keep you going, a surplus or permanent upgrades like a larger charge shot or giving your double gear system a shorter cooldown period for repeated constant use. The standard stuff, you know, but as always it helps you keep going and make the journey easier to handle. Most of the special weapons in this game are magnificent as well, and I love how in this game, once you get the weapon, the game lets you give it a test drive to see how it works so you don't have to waste ammo or, you know, put yourself in danger to get the most out of it. Every Mega Man game after this needs to have this. It is an awesome way of letting players get a feel for the weapon. Now, they don't all make the cut, but I got a good deal of use for most of them, not just as an offensive weapon, but for utility. Take for instance Impact Man's weapon, the Pile Driver. Now, dashing directly into an enemy can spell bad news because it leaves you so close to the baddie if you happen to miss, and that's what made weapons like the Top Spin in Mega Man 3 so pointless. But you can also use the attack as a mid-air dash, and that is very useful. You'd be surprised with how many floor hazards you can avoid if you never have to touch the ground, period. For weapons like the Blazing Torch, the shot angle's a little unorthodox, yeah, but in say Blast Man stage, a level that loves blowing shit up, you can prematurely set off the explosives and safely travel across the level that way with no worry. And assuming you're not doing Torch Man first, you can freeze that instant kill firewall with a well-placed Thunderstorm. The bounce ball is awesome for how much distance it covers in a short amount of time. It can be a little erratic because it's almost like you're shooting 3 super happy fun balls at once, but you don't taunt super happy fun balls, motherfucker, and I'm glad Capcom knows that. The acid barrier is a great shield that's fantastic for eating through enemy projectiles, the tundra storm is ideal for enemies above you, and the block dropper is good for coverage, but nothing my other weapons couldn't do better. I thought I didn't find much use for the scramble thunder either, because again, like the block dropper, I felt other weapons did a better job, and the chain blast was just a bit too slow for my taste. I like how it sticks to enemies, but it's not immediate enough, you know what I mean? With the double gear system, however, you can make these weapons even better. You're only allowed to activate one gear at a time, and they don't last very long as is, and if you let it overheat, you have to wait longer than usual for it to completely cool down. But as the name implies, you can do one of two things. Okay, three things technically. If you're low at health, you can activate both gears at once to trigger a sort of super mode that gives you enhanced speed and power, but leaves you crippled as shit once time runs out. It's like a fight or flight response basically, but I completely forgot about this feature. It's why I had to rely on tutorial footage to show it off. Maybe next time I'll remember to actually give it a whirl, but I found the standard gears to be more than enough, really. The power gear lets Mega Man temporarily overclock his systems, allowing him to unleash attacks like a second charge shot, or very much like Mega Man X, you can overclock your special weapons. And in that area, the power gear is incredible. Overclocked special weapons are absurdly useful. Your Tundra Storm becomes a fucking screen nuke, the acid barrier can now eat through enemies in addition to projectiles, the chain blast becomes a super bomb that just fucks up an enemy's day. Against Blockman's second form, it doesn't stand a chance. This is where the power gear really shines. I didn't get much use out of it by default. You could only get like one extra charge shot before it overheats, so initially I thought this gear kinda sucked. But once special weapons are thrown into the mix, holy shit. But when it comes to overall usage, the power gear doesn't compare to the speed gear. With this, you can temporarily slow down time. You also slow yourself down to some extent, which kind of goes against the namesake of the tool, but overall, it's super useful for avoiding oncoming attacks. It gives you more than enough time to react to dangerous obstacles, like those firewalls and Torchman stage I mentioned earlier, and with proper usage, you can annihilate a shitload of things before they even know what hit them. For added carnage, go to the options menu, turn on rapid fire mode, get yourself the upgrade chip that automatically charges your buster shot without needing to hold the button down, and watch in awe as your power lemons rip enemies apart while in speed gear. Utilizing both gears properly in conjunction with the items you can buy in Auto Shop makes Mega Man 11 a damn good adventure, I find. Sometimes it gets a little too safe for the 11th entry in the series. Balloon Man's level reminds me too much of Spring Man's stage in Mega Man 7 with how much you're bouncing around, and it makes getting this E-Tank a pain in the ass. Confound these balloons! I just want my damn energy drink! Torchman reminds me of Magma Dragoon from Mega Man X4, and the first boss in Wily Castle 1 is the Yellow Devil again. It's different enough to be fair, but come on, this is pretty blatant. And as far as post-game content, there isn't much to relish in. Maybe this will change with DLC, who knows, but Mega Man is the only playable character here, so no Proto Man, no base, you can't even play his role. There are achievements to unlock, so you have that if you like that sort of thing, and there's a challenge mode that lets you play every stage again with different stipulations, like collecting blue balloons or grabbing these character medals. Very superfluous means of getting more bang for your buck. There is a distraction with very little substance. The level design can be a little too long for its own good, and the lack of checkpoints on top of that can make dying feel overly punishing, not to mention the issues I have with knockback and its stun duration. But I feel there's so much more Mega Man 11 does right for that to become a deal breaker. The weapons are great, the double gear system makes Mega Man incredibly versatile in handling both enemies and stage obstacles, the game's production values and overall presentation is fine as well. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but concept, you see this is how you do cutscenes. I mean, these are still relatively static, but there's much more effort placed here in character animations and expressions. Look at Auto and Roll there, hiding in the back. That's the taste of fear. Mega Man 11 is a great return to the formula that Mega Man fans hold near and dear to their hearts. Now, whether this signals a proper return, we'll have to wait and see, but if you've been waiting for more Mega Man action, you definitely need to get this. It's available on the Nintendo Switch, the PS4, Steam, and Xbox One, so it's got all the bases covered. It's good to have you back, Mega Man. Now here's hoping it isn't a one-night stand. And with that said, I won't waste any more of your time. I gotta get back to Mega Man X Command Mission, so thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.